Alright, so there are basically two schools of thought when it comes to figuring out the levels, specifically the master out levels for your DJ mixer. One school of thought says that you should keep it within 0 decibels, or aka keep it in the greens. On this mixer, it's actually the first yellow, that's 0 decibels. The other school of thought says basically just make sure that you keep it out of the reds. We're going to figure out where you should really go. Now, the easy way to answer that is, of course, if you're playing at a venue that has a sound guy, that has the DJ equipment going into another soundboard with a person controlling that, all you have to do is go up to the person and ask him or her, you know, how high should I be taking the levels on my mixer, and whatever that person tells you, that's your answer right there. So depending on the place, sometimes they actually want you to take it really high because that's how the equipment was set up. Now, if that person doesn't exist, especially if you're, say, playing directly from your DJ equipment to self-powered speakers, then you might need to do a little bit of experimentation. So here we've got my Pioneer DJM-900 mixer, and I'm going to show you what happens when you play it at 0 decibels, and I'm going to show you what happens when you play at just below reds. So I've selected a part of the song here that's got a lot of energy, and here we've got it playing at 0 decibels, which is the first yellow mark. And we've got this all connected to my computer, and let's take a look at what the waveform looks like right now. Okay, so here we've got Audacity, and this is the waveform that's being created as the music is being recorded into the computer. As you can see, looks good. You can see no flattening of the waveform, which is a good thing. It means you've got the dynamic range still intact there, and it is pretty loud. Let's see what happens if we decided to play the mixer at let's say +6 or +9, basically right before reds. Okay, so this is +9, and let's see how that looks like on the computer. Okay, so we can see that basically the waveform is all maxed out, and it's a big old brick, which is not what we want. If we were to lower the input sensitivity, even if we bring it down to where it's not touching the edges of Audacity, you can see that the edges of the waveform are flattened at the peaks. So yeah, this is not hitting reds actually, and even then we're losing a bit of dynamic sound here because, well, I guess it's just too high, and you can see that's getting squashed. What this means is that even though you're playing underneath the reds, you're still taking out a lot of the dynamic features of your music and really turning it into like a big noisy block. So if you were to start lowering it down, let's pick something in between 0 and +9, which is on this one 6. That's 2 bars. There you go, 2 bars. And let's take a look at what that waveform looks like. Okay, here's the waveform at +6. You can see now that basically the edges of the waveform are not really flattened anymore compared to when it was at +9. You might think it's actually kind of quiet though, so all you have to do is raise the input sensitivity until it's where you need it and it's not clipping. There is too far, you can see it's clipping on the edges, and we bring it back down a little bit, you know, somewhere in between those two places. For my own personal taste, I like to play it at 0 decibels, and that gives me a little bit of room for doing effects and things like that, times when the volume might go to +6 and I'll still be okay. So that gives me a little bit of wiggle room. That's with this mixer, of course. Now the interesting thing is that it's not always the same. So here we've got my Pioneer XDJ-RX2, and this actually handles that very differently. Okay, so let's start at 0, and peaking at 0, let's see what the waveform looks like on the computer. All right, it's real tiny, so we'll bring the sensitivity up to get that waveform to come out more. Basically, the thing I want to show you is that you are maintaining the dynamic range here. But interestingly enough, and this is different from the last mixer we looked at, if I were to bring the volume up here to, let's even go to +9. So right before reds, this is red, that's bad. Let's go right below it, like right around there, and let's take a look at the waveform again. Right, so we'll bring the sensitivity down. So as you can see, by tweaking the sensitivity on the computer, you can actually play at +9 and still maintain the dynamic range of the music. What this basically means is that you can send out a nice hot signal +9 right before reds, and it'll still have the dynamic range and it won't have distortion. Very different from this mixer over here, which basically you should only play at 0 to 6 at most. The other one you can go to 9 and you'll still maintain the range, and it's a lot more foolproof, I guess you can say. So I guess the moral of the story is that make sure to test your equipment before deciding where you want to peak at levels wise. While I'd like to say that there's one rule you should follow for every piece of equipment, I guess that's not necessarily true, even if the equipment all comes from the same brand. So yeah, I guess that's that.